Notice that when we control these buttons, they're hard to click on because it kind of keeps waffling between whether it's a button with a hand symbol or whether it's the background, the white background. In other words, right now it's not a button, but if I'm right over the T, then it's a button. So we can fix that in Flash. How do we do that? Well, we'll take a look at this button. So I'm going to highlight this thrust button here, and then I'm going to double click on it, and now I'm in symbol editing mode for the button, right? Notice it says BTN1 here, and you can see it's a button. It's got a little symbol of a button or an icon of a button. The timeline is different in buttons than in movie clips. You've got these special keyframes, up, over, down, and hit. This is the mouse up, mouse over, mouse down, and then the hit area, right, or the activation area of the button. And so if we want to improve how this button functions, what we can do is we can put a keyframe on this hit area. I'll right click and insert a keyframe, and then define the active area. So I'll get my rectangle tool, and it doesn't matter what colors or whether I have a shape or fill or whatever. I'm just going to draw a rectangle over the area that I want the button to use as an activation area. And so then I'll go back to scene 1, and I'll do the same thing for my other buttons. So stop button, once again the selection tool, double click on it and put a keyframe on the hit area, and then draw a rectangle just right over the top. And then back to scene 1. Here's scene 1. Back to scene 1, and the selection tool, and then double click on the shield button. Notice the timeline is the button's timeline. I'm going to put a keyframe here, and once again the rectangle tool, and draw a rectangle right over the button. Now back to scene 1. Now if I hit Control Enter, you'll see that the button does not waffle back and forth between just a selection tool, a cursor, and then the button hand symbol. It works really nicely because of that hit area. Now I want to be able to stop this thrusting, but I can't. So let's set that up. So this stop button is button 2 here. So in Actions, all we have to do, I got to select the keyframe that has the actions on it, right there. Open up the Actions window. I'm going to highlight this code, copy, and then go to 2 lines down and then paste. Control C, Control V as in Victor. And I'll just say BTN2 ship.goto and stop on frame 1. Okay, and that's it. So now button 2 should be active. We'll hit Control Enter to test it out, and thrust and stop thrusting. Thrust, stop thrusting. So these buttons now target the ship movie clip, right, and basically add the interactivity. So how about the shield? For the shield, which is BTN3, what I'm going to do is we'll just, highlight the keyframe that has the action script, and I will take this BTN1 again, copy, and paste. I'll change it to button 3. And this time I'm going to say ship, go to, and play, but instead of using a keyframe, I'm going to put in here a double quotation mark. I'm going to put in here a double quotation mark and put the word shields. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to work. How does that work? Here we can say, well, here we're targeting keyframe 1 on the timeline, or frame 1 on the timeline, or frame 2 on the timeline, but this is going to target something else because we've given it a name in between quotation marks here of shields, right? So this is a string or a name, and I'll show you how that's going to work. So to make that work, I'm going to double click on the ship to go into symbol editing mode, and we're going to put the little shield animation right here on the timeline. And what I'll do is I'll jump out to frame, let's say 15 here, and I'll put a keyframe, okay? And on this keyframe I'm going to draw my shield, and for the shield I'm just going to use the oval tool, and I'll make the shield, let's say a purple ring, no fill. Right, so we have no fill, we have a stroke here, and I've set the stroke size over here in the property window to, let's say, like 7, right? And now, if I draw a perfect circle holding down the Shift key, right, there's my circle, I can then click and drag it over the ship. So when there's no shield, it looks like this. When there's a shield, it looks like this. Now, we're going to need to jump to this keyframe. Now to do this, up above, what I'll do is on the actions layer, I'm going to put a keyframe right here. And on this keyframe, instead of going into actions, I'm going to go over here to the property window and I'm going to give it a frame label. Label, name, shields. Hit enter. And now you can see that there's a frame label called shields. So now we can target this frame label. Notice there's a red flag here now. We can target this frame label with our code. If you want to see the word shield, what you do is you just go out here and put a regular frame. And now you can even see the name of the label up here on the timeline. That's pretty nice. So this will be the shield, and I want this shield to play for a few seconds and then start to disappear, warning the user of the game that they're about to lose their shield. So what I'll do is I'll scroll over here, and at frame 70 I'll put a keyframe, right? And then on frame 71 or 72, 2 frames over, I'll put another keyframe. And on this keyframe, I'm going to select the ring and press delete. So on this keyframe, the ring is gone, right? And then what I'll do is I'll copy this keyframe, right click, copy the whole frame. Notice I'm not copying the art, I'm copying the frame. And I'll paste that here. Paste frame. And then I want to copy the frame that has no shield, copy frame, and put that 2 frames ahead, right click, paste frame. And what I can do is then on this frame I'll hit F5 to put a regular frame. I can now copy this whole thing if I want, but I'm going to do one more time, F6 with no ring. Okay, no, this is no ring. Perfect. Okay, ring, no ring, ring, no ring. All right, no, I want this one, I'll press delete, to have a ring. So I'll just right click, copy frames, and paste frames. And then it has a ring, and copy frames, and paste frames. Perfect, no ring, and F5, right? Now if I wanted to with these keyframes, if I want this to last a little bit longer, I can just highlight the whole string, right click, copy all the frames, and then select this next frame, right click, and paste frames. And it pastes the whole lot of them. So now we're ready to go with our shields. When this plays, it's going to control play. It's going to play, and then it's going to delete. And then at the end, we need it to jump back to frame 1, which is our holding position right here. So let's do that. So at the top here, we'll put a keyframe, F6, and actions, this dot go to capital A, and we want and stop. Go to and stop, frame 1, close the parentheses and a semicolon, and we're good. So now, back to scene 1. Let's look at our code. We can see that we have button 3 telling us to go to and play the frame label shields, and it should work. We'll hit Control Enter. We're thrusting. We stop thrusting. We go to shield, and it puts us on shields, and then they disappear, and we go back to the beginning. So our shields last just for 4 seconds, or however many frames there are on the timeline, right? However many frames there are on the timeline, compared to or divided by whatever the frame per second is, the frame rate of our movie. And right now our frames per second is 24 frames per second.